World War I. The global conflict that changed the course of history, presented by History Facts and Mysteries. World War I, also known as the Great War, is one of the most significant and transformative events in modern history. The conflict, which spanned from 1914 to 1918, involved many of the world's great powers and forever reshaped the political, social, and economic landscape of the 20th century. It was a war of unprecedented scale, where new technologies, brutal trench warfare, and a web of alliances converged to bring about a global catastrophe. The ramifications of World War I can still be felt today, and the legacy of this conflict has shaped the world in ways that are often overlooked or misunderstood. At History Facts and Mysteries, we delve into the lesser-known aspects of history, uncovering the details that don't always make it into the mainstream narrative. In this video, we'll explore the key battles, pivotal figures, and far-reaching consequences of World War I. From the origins of the war to its lasting impact on global politics, we'll uncover the mysteries of a conflict that changed the course of history. But before we dive into the story of World War I, don't forget to subscribe to History Facts and Mysteries and ring the bell icon to stay updated with our latest videos. The spark that ignited the conflict. The origins of World War I are deeply complex, stemming from a tangled web of political alliances, imperial ambitions, and military buildups. But what triggered the conflict was a single event: the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary on June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo. The assassination was carried out by Gavrilo Princip, a member of a Serbian nationalist group. Austria-Hungary, backed by Germany, quickly blamed Serbia for the act and issued an ultimatum, which Serbia could not fully accept. Within weeks, Europe was at war, with the alliances of the major powers pulling them into a global conflict. On one side stood the Allies, France, Russia, and the United Kingdom, later joined by Italy and the United States. On the other side were the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand might have been the spark, but the underlying causes of the war were much deeper. Nationalism, imperialism, militarism, and the complex system of alliances had created a volatile environment in Europe. The tension had been building for years, and the assassination was the tipping point. The war begins. The Western and Eastern fronts. When war was declared, it was expected to be over quickly, but it soon became clear that this was a conflict of a different magnitude. On the Western Front, the Allies and the Central Powers faced off in a deadly stalemate that would last for most of the war. The trench warfare that defined the Western Front was brutal and deadly. Soldiers lived in cramped, muddy trenches, facing constant threats from enemy fire, gas attacks, and disease. The war of attrition seemed endless, with little territorial gain for either side. The Battle of the Somme, one of the bloodiest battles of the war, is often remembered as a symbol of the horrors of trench warfare. Fought between July and November 1916, it saw over 1 million casualties, yet only minimal territorial changes. The Battle of Verdun, another major conflict, also saw staggering losses and exemplified the relentless nature of the war on the Western Front. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, the conflict unfolded differently. The Russian Empire, struggling with internal instability, faced off against Germany and Austria-Hungary. Despite some initial victories, Russia's military was ill-equipped, and by 1917, the Russian Revolution led to the collapse of the Russian war effort. This revolution was one of the key turning points in World War I and would have far-reaching consequences for the future of Europe. The Battle of Gallipoli, a tragic misstep. One of the lesser-known yet pivotal moments of World War I was the Gallipoli campaign. In 1915, the Allies sought to open a new front by invading the Gallipoli Peninsula in Turkey. The goal was to knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war and secure a sea route to Russia. However, the campaign turned into a disaster for the Allies. The British and French forces, along with Australian and New Zealand Army Corps, ANZAC, troops, faced entrenched Ottoman defenses in difficult terrain. After months of heavy fighting, the campaign ended in failure, with hundreds of thousands of casualties and little to show for it. The Gallipoli campaign is remembered not just for its military failure, but also for the emergence of national identities for countries like Australia and New Zealand, who honor their soldiers with annual Anzac Day ceremonies. The role of technology, tanks, aircraft, and chemical warfare. World War I also marked a turning point in military technology. It was the first war to see widespread use of tanks, aircraft, and chemical weapons. Tanks, initially developed by the British, were designed to break through the stalemate of trench warfare. While they were slow and prone to mechanical failure, tanks proved to be an important innovation in warfare. Aircraft, too, played a key role. Initially used for reconnaissance, planes soon engaged in dogfights in the skies above the battlefields. The famous Red Baron, Manfred von Richthofen, became a legendary figure in aerial combat, and his exploits captured the imagination of people around the world. Chemical warfare, however, was perhaps the most horrifying innovation. Poison gas, including chlorine, phosgene, and mustard gas, was used to devastating effect. The gas caused horrific injuries, blinding and suffocating soldiers, and the psychological terror of gas attacks left deep scars on those who survived. The United States enters the war. For nearly 3 years, the United States maintained a policy of neutrality. However, several factors eventually led to America's entry into the war in 1917. The most significant was Germany's resumption of unrestricted submarine warfare, which led to the sinking of the British passenger ship Lusitania, killing 128 Americans. In addition, the interception of the Zimmermann telegram, in which Germany promised Mexico the return of its lost territories in the United States if they joined the war on the German side, further inflamed American sentiment. President Woodrow Wilson, who had initially sought to keep America out of the war, now called for the nation to enter, with the goal of making the world safe for democracy. The arrival of fresh American troops and supplies helped to tip the balance in favor of the Allies. In 1918, the Central Powers began to collapse under the pressure of continued fighting and economic strain. The German spring offensives had been repulsed, and the Allies launched their own offensives, breaking through German defenses. The end of the war, the armistice and the Treaty of Versailles. On November 11, 1918, at the 11th hour, the armistice was signed, effectively ending the fighting in World War I. The war had claimed the lives of over 16 million people, and millions more were wounded. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, officially ended the war, but its harsh terms, particularly the war reparations imposed on Germany, sowed the seeds for future conflict. The treaty's punitive measures led to economic hardship in Germany and contributed to the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, setting the stage for World War II. The League of Nations, created to prevent future wars, was weakened by the absence of the United States, and the political instability of post-war Europe would have lasting consequences. The legacy of World War I. A changed world. World War I dramatically altered the global order. The Austro-Hungarian, Russian, Ottoman, and German empires were dismantled, and new nations were created. The map of Europe was redrawn, and the consequences of the war would continue to shape global politics for decades. The war also led to significant social changes. Women, who had entered the workforce in large numbers during the war, were granted the right to vote in many countries. The war had also catalyzed technological, medical, and scientific advancements that would pave the way for the future. But perhaps the greatest legacy of World War I is the lessons it taught about the horrors of war. The conflict revealed the destructive potential of modern weapons and the immense human cost of global conflict. The devastation of World War I pushed nations to seek new ways to avoid such catastrophic wars in the future, even if they were ultimately unsuccessful in preventing World War II. A war that changed everything. World War I was a war like no other. It changed the course of history, not just in terms of political and territorial outcomes but also in how the world viewed war itself. The brutality of the conflict, the devastation it caused, and the lasting effects it had on global politics and societies make it a pivotal moment in the 20th century. At History Facts and Mysteries, we've only scratched the surface of the global conflict that reshaped the world. There are countless stories, both well-known and obscure, that tell of the courage, tragedy, and complexity of World War I. The echoes of this conflict can still be felt today, as the world continues to grapple with its lasting consequences. If you enjoyed this exploration into the Great War, Be sure to subscribe to History Facts and Mysteries and hit the bell icon for notifications on our latest videos.